Surf's up, guys? It's Mauisnake, and today I'm making an ESL Pro League Season 16 tier list for the teams that made it to the playoffs. As you will be able to see on your screen, this is the tier list. It's every team that's going into the 12-team playoffs. Here's the bracket also, so you guys have a little bit of a reference on your screen now. And you can see that some of the placements of the teams is a little bit odd, or at least the seeding is, because some of the favorites didn't necessarily deliver in their groups to attain that first position in the round robin structure. So that's why you've got FaZe, Navi notably starting in the round of 12. Wouldn't say that the opponent is the hardest for FaZe, probably going to make it through, but let's go through these teams. And the way I'm actually doing this is more so kind of how, based off of how I feel about the team right now and their strengths, than actually where I think they're going to finish. I mean, obviously for title contenders, I think all these teams should have a chance to win it all, but it's more just a ranking of strength. So whether or not that matches with the seeding and where they end up in the bracket, that's a different story, but it's how I feel after watching all 4 weeks of the groups. If you guys haven't been watching and living under a rock, I was working every single week. I watched the vast majority of these games, if not all of them. Like, I've been watching so much Counter-Strike, and these are pretty much my thoughts. I guess, like, you know, sometimes I'll miss a morning game, but that's about it. Pretty rare, honestly, because I'll usually just watch those too. And so I've arranged the teams, and I'm going to be sorting them out based off of group A, B, C, D. So you see that down here. This isn't that important for you guys, but this is how these teams finished actually within their groups. Vitality finishing first in group A, G2 first in group B, Maus, C, etc., etc. So we're going to start with the winners of group A, Vitality, making the best roster move of the player break by incorporating Spinks. This team is now incredibly strong. You would definitely say that they're a top 5 team in the world. They could even be bordering on top 3. I think Yakinder actually just said in a post-game interview after Liquid beat Cloud9 that he thinks Vitality are a top 3 team in the world. And I have a hard time differing with it, but I actually don't know if I would say that they're just there yet. It seems like even though they went 5-0 in their group, you can still identify some flaws, but the thing is that FaZe also, even when they were in their major form, you could see flaws there. And I'd say that right now with Vitality and the way that they play, I'm probably putting them actually at the top of challengers. I'm probably the most hesitant about this team based off of what I saw, just how their win conditions. ZywOo still, actually, he's performing better than he has for basically the entire year. Spinks is still continuing his form that he had on ENCE, which is very surprising given that he's swapping into a new team that plays a completely different style, but it's actually been working for him very well. But the problem I have with Vitality right now is I actually don't always find the other 3 players that dependable. Apex, of course, because he's the in-game leader, but then between dupreeh and Magist, there's just too many games where these guys fall off, and it doesn't feel like you have these solid anchor players or even rotator players, I suppose, that are going to find you something. So you just so heavily have had to rely on ZywOo and Spinks that when I talk about the title contenders, you'll see that there's something that raises them a bit above, because you wouldn't necessarily even say that the style of Vitality is so tactically sound that they're going to also win through those means. So, yeah, that's why I'm putting Vitality there. As for Fnatic, they're going to be occupying the happy to be here category. This is for teams that really, they're just kicking off their season. They had a good run. Fnatic, I think they play very solid Counter-Strike. I put it out there after the very first map of watching them versus NIP on Ancient, where they dismantled them, that I think this team is going to be top 15 within, I think I said 2 months. And I think they already hit 17th. After I said that, they jumped up like 12 spots or something like that, or 9 spots. So they're definitely becoming a team that people need to worry about, but they're not there yet that you should even worry about them having a chance to do any damage in this tournament. I would say that it's very likely that they just lose their opening matchup there versus Liquid. So next up, Navi had a horrible group stage. They went 2-3. The only reason they made it in was because of some weird tiebreaker rules. It's the first time in ESL Pro League history since changing to the single league format, so aka no NA and EU, it's just all one, that Navi has, I mean, they did it. They did the impossible. They made it through while having a losing record. And so you would want to consider them to be title contenders based off of the form in the prior season, but it's like what they showed in the group stage was just horrible. That being said, I still can't even count them out. The form of them right now is bad, but you still know that they're going to ramp up for this. And also, one thing that they kind of noted while they were while Blade was giving interviews and everything was just that they were focusing a lot of efforts, it seemed like, on the calling style. And then I would say that one thing that made them especially weak is that Bit looked bad. I would say Bit looked human. That's the main thing. He usually is just this aimbot robot, just headshot dominator. But in this game, or in these games, he kind of just kept going to the same spots, and teams started countering him. They just knew where he was going to play, because it didn't seem like Blade was focusing game plans around a comprehensive picture for the team. It was almost like he wanted to see what could be done with the IGLing of Electronic more, so he was focusing on that. And the only people that played well were pretty much just Simple and Perfecto when you watch some of these games. So Electronic kind of had a fall off, Bit did, SDY. I think we're also learning the limitations of SDY. He's kind of a guy that doesn't want to make mistakes. So I almost would put them also in challengers here as opposed to title contenders, but I would probably put them at the bottom of title contenders once we sort this all out. Now we move on to Group B, and G2 is looking incredible. The Hooksy move, they didn't drop a single map. First of all, they didn't drop a single map here at Pro League so far, and that's they were the only team to do that. Every other team at least dropped a map, even the other ones that went 5-0. But G2 was I'll say this: the game that they played against FaZe was where it convinced me that they need to be in title contenders. That was a game where you could tell they are breaking down situations so methodically that now I can see this team fixing rounds. When something goes wrong, when they're in a 3v4, I believe. I have full faith, especially against the majority of the teams that are in these playoffs. I would say that what puts them in the title contenders, and what I alluded to earlier with Vitality, is that they have three guys that are all insane. They have Nico, Hunter, Mauisnake. Mauisnake is in his career best form also now. He is playing much better than he ever did under Alexi B. They are giving him more freedom now. He's getting to choose his own shots. He has more openers now. He has more freedom in mid rounds. I'm pretty sure Alexi B used to micro Mauisnake to an extent, or at least put a leash on him that limited his ability and his contributions, and Hooksy has taken that off. He has let this boy run wild. So that is something to note right there. That's not your WhatsApp thing, that's mine. I'll turn that off. But that moves us to FaZe. I think that G2 definitely deserves to be in this conversation, but also FaZe is a team that ramps up, and that's why FaZe are still the #1 title contenders here. There is a very real possibility and likelihood that when they face off against G2, FaZe were playing at 85 to 90% of their true ability. What we have seen from them prior to this in the previous season at the major, at Cologne, at Katowice, that's kind of that 100% that you get from FaZe. That's what should happen in the playoffs here. And even though Kerrigan has strictly outlined that he cares most about majors, Cologne, and Katowice, knowing that the Grand Slam is right there at their doorstep, that all they need to do is get through these playoffs and secure it now, that's something that is on their mind, and it's going to make them play better. These guys have all shown that they play better under pressure in big moments, and that's why I still have FaZe as my #1 title contenders, and they're going to stay at that top spot right there. So that needs no further explanation. Outsiders are a team that's kind of between dark horses and happy to be here. They're not, okay, I'll say they're happy to be here because they're not truly dark horses. They don't actually, a dark horse usually has at least some chance of making it maybe to the finals or really winning the whole thing. There's no shot that's happening, just to be frank. Like, Norbert still has some flaws on Overpass A. I don't even think they had to play that here, but remembering back all the way to ESL Challenger Valencia, that is why Outsiders lost to Movistar Riders. That's why they lost maps, because Norbert doesn't know what he's doing on that bomb site. So that's such an important position. It's such a flaw in their map veto that if they have to play a team, and let's see who they're playing first. They're playing Furia, so that's a team that could play Overpass, and it's a team that should exploit Norbert if they do go onto that battleground. So I don't think that this Outsiders team is bad. I think that they're, again, a team that I'm starting to begin to like. I think people that have followed me know I was a huge fan of that VP roster. So there's a lot to like in terms of their style. I really want to get across this message that James is an excellent IGL. He is so good now. He has shown now 3 times that he's built up just incredibly strong rosters. I'd say this is going to be his third, whereas the only guy that he's had to work with throughout all of this has been Kickers. One right-hand man, and he's made it to the major finals at Berlin. He's made it to the top 8 8 with the VP lineup, and like this guy is legit. And even if you don't like his gameplay in the server, what his team is doing around his calling style is something that needs to be addressed, and it needs its plaudits. This is there's no reason that people should just, you know, you need to separate the two. Even if you don't like his style of opping, you should like his style of calling. Next up, Maus, actually the surprise of Group C to top it, actually carrying the momentum that they had from Cologne into this group stage. And I would put them as dark horses, even though this is probably they're probably the weakest winners of their group in my eyes, whereas the other being Cloud9, G2, and Vitality. I'd say those other three are definitely better than Maus, but this is a team that people need to worry about now. Like they're a legit team. I would count them probably as favorites between, if we look at the bracket, they're going to play either the winner of Fnatic or Liquid. I'd probably have to say Maus might be the favorites, because the form we have seen from both Liquid and Fnatic wasn't that pleasant. So that could be a top 4 finish for them. And then, so you kind of, but then you wouldn't really favor them to beat a Cloud9 or FaZe when we keep moving to the semis. So that's really where their journey should end, but it might even end in the quarterfinals. So I put them as dark horses. I actually think if they face off against a FaZe or Cloud9, they might actually take a map off a team like FaZe. I wouldn't think they would do it against Cloud9. Cloud9 just seems to have a style that would just dominate Maus in my eyes. But I do think that Maus are a team that people should worry about. And if they take lightly, they can lose. They can legitimately lose to them. So now we go to Heroic. And Heroic's a team that I would say almost 6 months ago, I would have put Heroic maybe at the bottom of title contenders, top of challengers, but now they're kind of like a happy to be here or dark horse for me. They barely made, like, they are not looking too convincing with Yabi. I'd say that they got better as the group stage went on, but I'd put them maybe at the end of dark horses here, because if we look at who they have to face, they have to play Navi right away and then G2 after, and that's probably why. I mean, I said I would do this ranking based off of just overall strength and not just looking at the bracket too much. But yeah, I just don't think that if I look at all these teams that I have above them in title contenders and challengers, they're not better than any of these teams. They're definitely not. They're a few steps behind where they used to be. Yabi is still integrating into spots he never played. Like, they're making him play all these lurker positions that he just wasn't a lurker when he played with Copenhagen Flames. He was a space taker. He was basically the guy. Roy was the main kind of entry guy, but Yabi was also very frequently in the fray of action. So they're putting him in spots that he just doesn't get them yet, and that's a problem. But I think he's getting a lot better, and he's actually doing it a little bit quicker than I thought. But he's still not world class at his positions yet. So that's why I don't think that move is working out as neatly as they would have wanted. And I would probably put them maybe back and forth with Maus here in dark horses. It's pretty low. Like, you shouldn't count them out of a series entirely, but the likelihood is just so low that they're gonna make it. Now, the final finish in Group C, Complexity. This is clearly a happy to be here team. I love these guys. Really think that Grim is coming into his own now after probably the blow to his confidence that he took on Liquid. I think he's now gathering himself back up, and he's working with that experience to become a player that is showing some decent initiative in mid rounds. And he's actually the mechanics that we've all talked about in terms of probably the best aimer that he was 3-4 years ago in North America, barring of course not including Elige or NAF or anything like that, or Twist, but he was always one of the strongest aimers out there. And I think that now everything's being put together for him. But the thing is that this change to get Halzerk has worked. Like, this is now a Complexity that before people would have probably said 0-4 in their group, but now with Halzerk, they're showing a level of consistency that you can't be too unhappy about if you're Jason Lake. Like, this is what you wanted. You wanted a guy that can clutch out rounds, that's just not going to make as many mistakes. He's not perfect, but Halzerk in this group stage, actually, I think Halzerk might have looked better than OC, legitimately. So that's something to put out there. It's the best opper on a North American team is not on Liquid right now. And he's not even North American either. So maybe we should just keep importing everybody. But no, I think that the team is happy to be here. This is already a good season for them, having made it to the playoffs of Pro League. It's going to give them a lot of confidence moving to the RMR. I have them making it out of the RMR. We'll get to that topic when it comes, but Complexity just very much so at the bottom of the rung here. Final group, Group D. We've got Cloud9, Furia, Liquid. Cloud9 they're title contenders again. I have my ups and downs with this team. They're my toxic relationship of the moment. Uh, and some days I would say that this group stage showed me nothing but good. That's why I have to put them there. I have to put them as a title contender. The biggest hurdle for Cloud9 right now is the mental fragility. But in a studio, which this whole tournament should be is in, that should work in their favor. And when it seems like they've gotten to big moments in the past, they've had their difficulties. I still think that Navi could be erratic, but I have to think that they look back at their failures, especially at Cologne, and said to themselves, "We're never going to do that again." And I want to, so I truly do want to believe in them as title contenders in what I saw in the group stage, but I will actually back down from that just a smidgen because despite the fact that they play a better style than Vitality, the IGL role is where I think they're still the weakest. I think it's tough to know when the pressure is on. Are they going to be able to hit the highs that I saw in this group stage? So I want to put them there as so badly in title contenders, but I simply can't. Just knowing what I have seen in the past, and you have to look at the history of this team and where it has failed so many times before. They weren't able to capture the momentum of that Dallas win and do anything with it in the rest of the season. So they're just challengers for me, but but the thing is that if they can play like they played in this group stage, they can absolutely win this tournament. They would play FaZe, and they've already beat them at Dallas, so that's a matchup they think they should have confidence in. Then they play a team that they're certainly that is certainly weaker than them in like a Maus, Fnatic, Liquid, and then you look at who they would meet in the finals, and it's just whoever comes out that other side. Still looking at the strengths of all the teams and how they played and what I know their potential could be. I just know the potential for them to capitulate in such a disappointing manner. But then that moves us to Furia, and Furia, they rebuilt their energy. They were burnt out. Caserado said it to Freya at Cologne. They were burnt out. They had too long. The season was too long for them. They were probably away from home forever, playing in Europe. And I know that they boot camp in Serbia actually, and that's just so foreign to 5 Brazilian guys, 6 if you include their coach. And so they found some form again, but they're just dark horses to me. They're not they're not even really necessarily playing they're still playing their kind of aggressive style, but they're not so much so like it doesn't look insane anymore. It doesn't look crazy. It doesn't look like this is what is instilling fear into their opponents. What's instilling fear is closing out a round against Caserado, because he is without a doubt one of the best 10 riflers in the world right now. If you're solely taking pro league form, he's one of the best riflers, period, like top 3. But I mean, nobody really just looks at that little of a sample size and says that's it. So but you could safely say right now he's in top 10 rifle form in the world. And so that's kind of a reason they can be a dark horse. It just seems like him as an individual is playing very well, but I might even put them lower than Heroic, because I think in terms of structure they still are a little bit wonky. They're refining the art style, but it's still I wouldn't even say predictable. I almost kind of think that's a lazy way to characterize it. I would just kind of say that the style that they're playing is just in some ways flawed, map to map. Like it's I like that they sometimes actually do 2 things at once now on a map. Like I feel like that's something that they're incorporating. It's very kind of Navi-esque. They're starting to like make 2 actions at the same time, especially on the T side, which is very confusing for teams to deal with, and kind of saw that in this group stage a little bit. But I don't think that they're necessarily like way better than they were before. So they're kind of on the border with a few of these teams, the Maus, the Heroic, and them. I think that's a very fair assessment. I don't really necessarily even put any of these dark horses well above each other or beneath each other. I think they're just honestly, they're just kind of all similar. And then last but not least is Liquid. And Liquid, this really hurts to say, but this team is not really a dark horse in my eyes. They're just happy they made it through. Yakinder had to have an insane individual performance on the last map of all of ESL Pro League to drop 40. I think he dropped 41 kills against Cloud9. And if they lost that map, who knows? Like I have no idea if they would have made it out. I mean, if they lost the series, Eternal Fire would be here instead of them. And so Liquid's form right now is bad. They took too long of a break. It seemed like Yakinder was almost frustrated with the fact that people were just like not practicing as much as they should have during the player break. But the thing is that I almost kind of want to put it like this: like this team can ramp up and get better. And at Blast, they looked good. Like, and it's kind of weird to see them fall off in the fashion that they have. Like ESL Pro League felt like a slog losing to Eternal Fire, but I kind of just think that's like a single blip, like a slight blight on their resume for their group stage. But it's really tough to imagine that this Liquid team is gonna, like, they can't really be a dark horse in my eyes, because I don't think they have any chance at finding a couple upsets. I think they can maybe, you know, beat, if we look at the bracket, they can maybe beat Maus, but then you would just have them as pretty severe underdogs versus anybody. I would put them this. I think they're better than happy to be here, but they're definitely the lowest of the dark horses in my eyes right now. They've struggled to get to the playoffs. It's just that I know from what we've seen in the past that if they do get on the grind in the next couple days and refine a few things, they could do well. But the thing is that Vertigo is just such a flawed map for them right now. I think the way that they play the CT side is just simply bad, where they just have OC playing middle with a rifle on the first gun round every time. Like, why does he not have an op? And why is OC also not playing bad? I think that they're investing a lot of resources into Yakinder and Elige in a way, and this is all very fresh in my mind, which is why I'm going on for it a little longer. But I also think it's just like they're not putting anything forward for OC in terms of trying to set him up. And Cloud9 kind of just targeted him when they played Inferno. They kind of just ran at him. He was opping mid. He was not hitting shots, and Axile, anybody, and Afni, I think even, were just entering him, just dry entering him with a rifle, and it was just kind of sad. It's not what I want to see from OC. I've seen him play better in the past. He even played much better at Cologne, and it's not what you want from Liquid, where Yakinder has to hard carry, where Naf has to clutch 3 rounds in a game. Like, it's just like, you can't ask that of these guys when they have to play the competition that are in these playoffs. So that's why I almost can't even put them in dark. Like, they're right between happy to be here and dark horses, but I'll keep them dark horses because just because I would say that they can ramp up in a way that I don't think the other happy to be here teams have demonstrated whatsoever. None of those teams at the bottom there have shown me they have a level higher than what we just saw, but I know that Liquid has in the past. So that's why it's possible to put them as dark horses. But yeah, this is actually my tier list. I would say that the most contentious thing that I probably put is that I put G2 in the title contenders, where I think some people would probably put Vitality. Some people want to believe in Cloud9, but I think we've all seen Cloud9 fail enough at this point that none of us can truly believe they're contenders, unless they just find that form. If anybody had to ask me, like, if I were a bet maker, though, this is kind of, I think, the odds I would give in terms of people winning the tournament. I would probably give the best odds for FaZe, or worst, I guess, worst odds for FaZe, in terms of on the better side of things, like whatever. But I might actually put Vitality a little higher if I'm trying to be a little bit more objective here. But I just kind of, in some ways, am not sold yet as much as other people are. If I work a Vitality game, I'll explain more as to why. But I think this video has covered everything that it was supposed to. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If honestly, write some comments. I will probably respond to them, because this is something I could talk about for a long time, having spent 4 weeks here in Katowice watching just all these teams play nonstop. So if you guys have any comments, concerns, even if you didn't like the format of the video, well, sure, tell me if you didn't like the format of the video, because comments are good on YouTube no matter what. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram. Didn't see that one coming. And as always, being toxic is a choice.